At long last, the Labour Party has chosen someone to fight the by-election in Glasgow East. Finding a candidate for a seat where a Labour-sponsored Christmas pudding could have been sent to Parliament isn't normally a protracted business, but it's a by-election and it's widely expected to be decisive for Gordon Brown. If Labour does badly, those party members currently trying to feel his pulse are expected to start trying to feel his collar. Our political editor, Michael Crick, is there.
In a climate of financial squeeze and economic downturn, the minds of voters in a rundown inner city seat like this are bound to turn to matters close to home. How to make ends meet, the fear of crime. Problems especially acute north and east of Celtic football ground, in the ward of Parkhead. This is one of the most deprived and poor council wards in the whole of Britain. The average male life expectancy in the Parkhead ward is below 63. That's 13 years less than the UK national average. And the number of people in the adult working age population without a job is more than 50%. Things aren't much better in the rest of the Glasgow East constituency. Labour's naturally under fire for this state of affairs, but defending a whopping 13,000 plus majority. Still with no candidate though, they were out this afternoon, on the doorsteps and at the intercoms.
Good stuff. And can I ask if you've decided how you're likely to vote? No.
They've had 10 days of turmoil in which party bigwigs seem to have offered the job to as many as 5 different people, 4 of whom said no. But some people say, well, you chickened out, you were frightened that you were going to lose. That would destroy your reputation.
Well, Labour have a fantastic reputation in this city, and particularly in this part of the city.
Well, that's not what other people say. They say this part of the city, you know, it's one of the most deprived parts of Europe. I mean, some of the worst life expectancy and some of the worst employment rates in this constituency. That's nothing to be proud of.
Well, you know, people remember why that happened in the 1980s under a Tory government. Places like this were ignored and
that was
destroyed.
20 years ago.
And destroyed. And what we've been doing as a party in government over the last decade is changing the face of constituencies like this.
The SNP man, John Mason, 10 years a Glasgow councillor, needs a 22% swing, not unknown in by-elections. And his leader, Scottish First Minister Alex Salmond, today spoke of causing a political earthquake.
I mean, I've been doing this for 10 years and...
Mr Mason promises to be full-time if elected. Clearly a dig at the woman Labour were due to pick, who already has one job as an MSP in the Scottish Parliament. Mr Salmond, Michael Crick from Newsnight, your candidate's just committed himself to being a full-time MP. Shouldn't you make the same commitment to your constituents? After all, you've got 2 jobs, one in the Scottish Parliament and one at Westminster, when a lot of people around here haven't got any job.
Well, the people in the north east of Scotland passed a verdict on that, Michael, both in 2005, when I said what I was doing to stand as First Minister of Scotland, and in 2007, last year, when the people of Gordon and in both cases elected me, and in both cases elected me with huge swings and huge majorities.
To launch his campaign, David Cairns chose a local church of St Jude, patron saint of hopeless causes. And they'll need a miracle here, given the Tories came a poor 4th last time, with less than 7%.
Morning all. Morning Michael.
Morning. Coming here to save your deposit, Mr Cameron?
Coming here to get as many votes as we can for this excellent Conservative candidate. We've been out on the streets after you, please.
But St Jude is the patron saint of lost causes.
Well, that's probably why Newsnight have decided to come and join us.
Well, you come here.
Right, we're going this way.
Davina Rankin will need a saintly miracle here, given the Tories came a poor 4th last time, with less than 7%. But her leader stresses the wider picture.
When you look at the Labour Party situation, you know, no leader in Scotland, no candidate in the by-election, a Prime Minister who won't visit the constituency, it does seem completely rudderless, leaderless and shambolic. And that is bad enough for people in Glasgow East who've got this by-election that they didn't expect, but for the rest of the country it's even more tragic. This government is just sort of falling apart in front of us.
The Lib Dems, 3rd at the last election, face being squeezed too, though they insist that their man, local teacher Ian Robertson, is the real threat to Labour and not the SNP. Isn't this really a fight between you and the Conservatives for fourth place?
No, not at all. We were third place at the last election, only about 1,600 votes behind the SNP. So the Labour vote is crumbling. We've heard that already today from a number of people. They're just not going to vote for Labour. So when their vote crumbles, it could go anywhere.
Such hopes were raised by this shopkeeper, who actually holds a Labour Party card. So, Mr Hamid, this is your Labour Party membership card,
yes.
And yet here on the desk you've got Liberal Democrat leaflets. There's something gone wrong here.
Well, no, what hasn't gone wrong, I will continue to believe in Labour that I believe in. They have lost complete touch with the grassroots. Instead, they're just, as long as I'm all right, Jack, they're happy to keep themselves in power now that they know that they're going to get a bloody nose, and I hope that they do. I'll continue to be a Labour Party member, but I want them to register my displeasure with how badly I feel about the way that they've run this country for the past 10 or 15 years.
An hour or so ago, Labour finally endorsed the latest name blessed by the party high command, Margaret Curran.
I am honoured to be nominated to fight this seat for the Labour Party in the East End of Glasgow.
Picked by a remarkable 46 votes to just 2. Ms Curran carries a huge burden, though. Her success or failure could go well beyond Glasgow in what might be the biggest by-election in a generation.
Well, now with us in the studio are the leader of the SNP and First Minister in Scotland, Alex Salmond, and we're also joined by the Labour Minister at the Scottish office, David Cairns, but Alex Salmond's a bit too grand to discuss, so we'll talk to Mr Cairns first. Why is it taking you so... It's true, you won't discuss with him, you are too grand. Why is it taking you so long to choose a candidate?
Well, I'm not going to pretend this was a cunning plan that we had.
No,
clearly, we wanted a candidate on Friday night, but at the very last moment, one of the major contenders decided that he didn't want to put his family through the rigours of the by-election campaign and the rigours of frontline politics. Now, you've got to respect that. So we reconvened this evening, which is what the party members wanted to do. And we've got an excellent candidate. Margaret Curran won't be very well known, I think, to viewers in England, but she's very well known to viewers in Scotland. She's got a terrific record, both as a local...
But she was, in fact, the third choice, wasn't she?
No, she was the first choice. She's the only...
Oh, the first choice?
She was the first choice of the local members at the
Why did Mr
meeting.
Ryan then pull out, if he wasn't the first
choice?
Well,
I'm not going to get into the personal details of the conversation he had with his family. His family decided they didn't want him to stand, and you've got to respect that. What about Mr Purcell? Mr Purcell was never a candidate in this. He never put his name forward. He never submitted a CV. He never wanted to stand.
Is it not true that Gordon Brown did try to get him to stand?
No, it's absolutely not true.
So that's all made up, is it?
Absolutely. I'm afraid to say it was in the newspapers. That doesn't make it true. OK, well, perhaps you can help us, as you're so well acquainted with what Mr Brown does. You can tell us whether Mr Brown will be going up to campaign in this by-election for a change. No, he won't be going to campaign. I think only once in the last 30 years a Prime Minister has gone to fight in a by-election, and we're not expecting him there. We're going to be fighting a by-election very much based on the issues facing the people in the East End. Margaret Curran is a representative in that area. No, he won't be.
Despite the fact that if he does badly,
done at all in 30 years apart from one occasion.
It's the end of his Prime Ministership if he does badly.
I don't accept that. We're fighting very hard to win this seat. This is a seat not about the future of any particular politician, it's about the future of the folk who live in the East End of Glasgow. And it's about getting the right policies for the East End of Glasgow, getting the right champion, the right representatives for the East End of Glasgow. It's an area which has seen remarkable transformation, but as your film showed, there's a long way to go. There's a huge task ahead, and we need the right policies and the right champions.
Michael Crick wanders into a shop, finds a bloke who's a member of the Labour Party who wants you to lose.
Well, honestly, I mean, I'm not particularly clear where that particular gentleman was coming from on some of these issues that he mentioned.
He was a member of the Labour Party who wants you to lose.
Well, I disagree with him. I disagree with him.
What a surprise.
Well, it is a surprise. Well, what did you expect me to say when you asked me that question? I think you'll see right across the East End of Glasgow, an area that has had a remarkable renaissance. 9 new primary schools, Jeremy built. Excellent results being achieved in the new secondary schools that are there. Big reduction in unemployment, big reduction in incapacity benefit, the prospect of the Commonwealth Games coming. Now, what we must do is build on that success and get the right policies with the right champion to bring that forward.
Now, your candidate is an MSP, Ms Curran. Will she give up her job as an MSP if she's elected?
She will at one point, not in the immediate future. She's got to discuss this with our local.
Why are you attacking
party
Alex
members.
Salmond then for having more than one job?
Well, I'm not attacking Alex Salmond for having
your
more than one
party
job.
has.
Well, there's a number of differences between.
They were
Alex.
laying into him last week because he'd only asked a very limited number of questions, frequently had failed to appear there, and had campaigned on issues about vole habitat.
Well, he is the First Minister. Actually, and that in itself is a full-time job.
I bet you wish you were taking part in discussion now, don't you?
He'll put his own in due course. Don't worry, we're used to that. There's a key difference actually, which is unlike Alec, where although there's some overlap in his constituencies, Margaret's constituency for the Scottish Parliament is entirely contained within Glasgow East. She's representing exactly the same people. She'll draw one salary, she'll have one office. Actually, in this days when people are concerned about the cost of our representation, this will actually cost the taxpayers less
Is she
money.
in favour of an early referendum on independence?
No, I don't think that she is. There's nobody actually pushing for an early referendum on independence in Westminster. Alex put it on the agenda for the Scottish Parliament, but at a time and a place and in a manner of his choosing. He won't actually say exactly what he's going to do and when he's going to bring it forward. Now, that's his choice, but that's an argument that's taking place in the Scottish Parliament, not at Westminster.
Alex Salmond, the difficulty for you, I suppose, is that you're campaigning in this by-election as if you're the party, as you have been for a long time, of opposition. And in fact, you're now the establishment in Scotland.
Well, if this by-election comes down to a choice between the track record of the SNP government in Scotland or the Labour government in London, then the SNP will win the election because the SNP government are popular and the Labour government, as we've just seen from one of their members in the constituency, are dramatically unpopular.
Well, that's probably because you haven't been in power very often. And people haven't woken up to the fact that you haven't kept some of your promises.
You were actually on the right track as far as the early referendum is concerned, because it's only a few weeks since the entire parliamentary group in the Scottish Parliament declared they were off one mind behind Weddy Alexander's call for an immediate referendum. And I would expect to believe that Margaret Curran would have some sort of schizophrenic change of political attitude if she became an MP.
It has been known, hasn't it? As indeed your own party has changed its mind on, for example, student loans.
But not the same person simultaneously if she was in Westminster or the Scottish Parliament. So I think we should avoid Margaret having that dilemma and leave her in the Scottish Parliament so she can only have one policy at a time.
Well, there you go again. You see, you're campaigning as if you're an opposition, and in fact you're a government there, and you made promises to become a government, and you haven't kept them.
Oh, on the contrary, the reason
you haven't kept your promises on primary school sizes, you haven't kept your promises on student loans, you haven't even kept your promises on something like physical education in schools, have you?
Well, we've frozen the council tax, we've taken the tolls off the bridges, we've got prescription charges being phased out.
Those are different issues.
But they are promises and commitments that the SNP government have kept in 1 year in office.
People naively assume that when you make a raft of promises, you keep all of them, otherwise they're not promises.
And you have a 4-year term when you're elected to the Scottish Parliament.
So all of these things will be accomplished in your 4-year term.
We're working through our manifesto, but Jeremy,
they will all be accomplished.
There must be a reason.
You can give us.
There must be a reason
why. You're the head honcho. You can give us a promise. Are they going to be accomplished in this 4-year term or not?
We're working through our manifesto for the 4-year term, but there must be a reason.
Give me a yes or no.
We're looking to implement our manifesto across the 4-year term.
You're looking to implement
well,
it.
Obviously
That's not saying we will.
Yeah, and we have worked through 140 of our promises to date, which I reckon is about 3 a week, Jeremy. Which is why, of course,
we are going to honour all our promises.
And you'll accept that the SNP government is dramatically popular in Scotland, and the Labour government in Westminster is dramatically unpopular.
Totally irrelevant to my question. My question is, are you going to honour these promises?
We're working through our manifesto, Jeremy.
Why didn't you just say yes?
We've implemented 140. We're going to seek to implement the rest.
Why didn't you just say yes?
Well, that's what we're trying to do, Jeremy. We're working through our manifesto in a 4-year term. We're working through our manifesto, Jeremy.
Why don't you say yes?
We're working through our manifesto.
No, not yes. We're working through our manifesto. Yes, we are going to keep all the promises we made.
Because we're a minority government who.
So you might not.
Well, if we get defeated I'll give you an example. One of the issues we got defeated on early in our position as a minority government was whether there should be trams in Edinburgh. Now, we can't control a parliament which we have a minority position, but we have won 3/4 of the votes in that parliament, and we are, for the first time, a government which is having probably the most extended political honeymoon in history. Now, there has to be a reason for that, and the reason is we've frozen the council tax, we're getting to abolish tuition fees, we've taken off the bridge tolls, and prescription charges are being abolished in Scotland.
What happens
These are big achievements.
If you win this by-election, what happens?
Well, I think what will happen is Glasgow East will be in the map and there'll be a dramatic change in policy. I think the policy change will be on fuel prices and energy costs, because I believe that Gordon Brown would rather save his own job and change policy than not change policy. So I think the people of Glasgow East have an enormous opportunity to dramatically change the politics of this country, the political earthquake that I was speaking about earlier today, Jeremy.
Alex Salmond, David Cairns, thank you both very much. And here's the list of all the candidates so far declared in the Glasgow East by-election. Nominations close on Wednesday.